welcome. I see we've got a big group of people. Just to introduce myself, my name is Benita Williams. I'm an evaluation consultant from Pretoria. And I work with both quantitative and qualitative data. And I'm sure many of the people in the room have some tips and tricks that they can share of their own. So I am going to try to have this presentation in a demonstration conversation kind of way so that we can maybe learn from each other. But I thought of maybe just sharing a couple of cool tricks that you might find useful when you work with qualitative data. So the intention here is to give you just some food for thought. Think about these. You might have used them, you might have come up with something better, but here's a couple of ideas that you might be able to try out. So what I am going to share with you is a tool that we developed, which we call an impact story tool. So I'm going to share a little bit about that. That's something that we use to collect qualitative data in a rigorous way. I'll show you what we've done with that as well. I'm going to show you an interesting source of qualitative data that doesn't require you to be collecting anything, but literally just using data that's already available, of course, with necessary consent. Then I'm going to show you an interesting way to quickly make sense of a lot of qualitative narrative data, word clouds. And then I am going to show you an analysis tool that's available for free. There's a light version that's available for free. And if you're interested in getting into qualitative data analysis, a little bit more advanced stuff, then this is a tool that you can play around with. So 2 inputs around data sources and 2 inputs around analysis. Okay, so let me jump in. So a tool for collecting and confirming qualitative data. Now we've presented at the Bridge Community of Practice on this before. We've presented at the SAMEA conference, the South African Monitoring and Evaluation Conference, on this before. And the feedback that we've received from people is that they find it useful. Of course, you're very welcome to use, adapt this idea as you see fit. But what is it? So an impact story tool is a tool for collecting and confirming qualitative data. You can collect your data. This allows you to link your qualitative data back to your theory of change. It asks for people for very specific examples of changes. Then it asks the participant to say, do you really think that the program that we're evaluating, the activity, the project, the relationship is contributed to this, or did it just happen? Would it have in any case happened without the program? And then it also has a verification step where when somebody says a change happens, that you ask, is there somebody else in your organization that we can talk to confirm it? So through these 4 steps, you get really useful data. Let me show you. With the learning brief, the link to the learning brief is on the right-hand side, but I'm going to show you screenshots of it. It's on the DGMT website at the moment. And it will shortly after this meeting be in the meeting highlights with the Bridge resources as well. Okay. So the first part of the tool is trying to link it. So you design your qualitative data collection so that it aligns with your theory of change. You want to ask people what changed. So what's the impact, right? So we use the term impact very loosely. What is the change that you've seen that relates back to this program? And the first question is, which of the following categories best describe the kind of impact that you noticed? So you'll see that it lists there: build and improve the capacity to reflect on own practice, support schools to implement principles of excellent practice, reduce duplication of effort, establish effective partnerships. I think if you look at those, they sound like outcome statements on the theory of change, right? And that's exactly where we got them. So why we start with that is we're almost priming the participant to say, here's a list of things that we kind of expected the program to do. So think of your example and tell us which kind it is. Right, so it's open-ended as well. but it does prime your participant to understand what it is that you are looking for. Sometimes what we do is before we go out and we send out the impact story tool, we'll sit at a meeting and we'll give people an opportunity to just share what has changed, right? And then afterwards we say, okay, you gave us this explanation, we write it down, we jot it down in an email or something, and we say, please, would you mind to go and complete an impact story tool related to that change? So then they already had the account out. Question 1, link it back to a theory of change, your theory of change, a specific outcome. And then question 2 is the example of change. So again, if you sit in a meeting and people tell you, oh, we've now raised 20 million Rand because we made a link with the person, with a donor at the meeting, right? So that's the example of the change. What asking a lot of W questions does is it helps a person to unpack that a little bit. So what we fundraised 20 million Rand, who? We did that in conjunction with this person that we met at the meeting. This is really, so what? This is really important for us because we could use this funding to provide food to kids at the school. And then coalition, in this case, this is the initiative. How did the initiative contribute? Without the meetings that we had at the coalition, we would not have met this person. So we can probably say with very clear, without having to try to convince anybody, that it is because of this intervention that we got to the change. Now, sometimes it's not that clear. The attribution is not that clear. People might say, yeah, we've bumped into them 20 times, and maybe it would have been emerged by itself. That might be the example that people give, and that's quite important to document as well, because I think trying to link things directly to a program is often trying to reduce the complexity out there. So the first 2 questions, try to get the example, link it back to the theory of change. Question 2, get that example unpacked in as much detail as possible. Question 3 is a little bit more detailed. So it goes into, let's try to unpack the contribution thing. So do you think this impact would have occurred in any way? Yes, partly, or no? What specific activity or aspect of the coalition contributed to the impact being realized? So then these items here relates back to the activities in your theory of change. So these are the outcomes in your theory of change, and these are the activities. So we had a plenary and a peer review process and informal networking and workstream sessions. That's what the coalition did. And these were the outcomes, and now we're trying to link an example to show that we've actually made a change. Question 4 is then around the verification. So your name, your organization, your position. Is there somebody else, question 5, that might be able to confirm the story, right? And that's it. So what this does, you can administer this, like I say, after you've collected broad narrative accounts in a meeting, or after you've had a quick chat with somebody in an interview, or even in a less structured way. You capture that note and you give it back to the participant and say, you said this, help me unpack it. The other way in which you can do this is actually use this as an interview tool. So instead of giving a form to a person to complete, you actually adapt it for an interview. And what it does, it helps you to collect a whole range of data. Like I say, data linked to your theory of change, both the outcomes and the activities, the very specific example of a change, an indication of what the contribution of the intervention is, and then something that allows you to verify your data. And these links back to our standards for qualitative data. Let me show you though, then you can see on the right-hand side, there's a little box. So what we then do is we take those detailed accounts here, the coalition's contribution, we take that, and then as evaluators or as researchers, sometimes even with a group of participants, we sit down and say, let's go and look at these examples. We might think that a change that affected 100 people or a big whole organization is more significant than an impact that just affected one person. So then we put that down almost in a kind of rubric to say, well, high impact is lots of people, low impact is just one person. We can then also qualify, if it is an impact on the learner, is this something that's a really significant impact on the learner, or is it something that's just incidental, right? So an example of a really important impact is they gave a learner a bursary, and that learner then went to a new school and they were able to get into a better university and a better job. So that point of giving a person a bursary that enabled them to go to a new school is a lot more, is a much higher quality or better impact change than a change where the learner just learned how to cross the street, right? So it doesn't have the same value. So you as a qualitative researcher can actually go and sit down and rate that example. You can also try to quantify or categorize that change to say, well, it was just a change in a value, it was just a change in an attitude or a skill or knowledge or in an individual behavior or in some sort of an organizational behavior. So that then gives us, if you code your qualitative data with a framework like this, and again, you can adapt this framework based on what you have, based on your intervention or your needs. If you code your qualitative data like this, you can actually get a really nice indication of what the spread of kind of changes are. It accounts for the fact that your program contributed maybe just to some of them, but it also accounts for the fact that, there's changes and then there's changes. I'm trying to quantify that. So let me show you an example of the kind of analysis that we did. So what kind of changes or impact was noticed? Would this have occurred in any way without the coalition? So we didn't get anything influenced broad policy change, no respondents. Foster adoption of new networking practices by participating individual schools and organizations. So they say new working practices happened. So we got a total of 19 accounts, 19 stories of that. 10 of the people said that if it wasn't for the coalition, this would not have happened, right? So that's the no. 7 of them said, well, maybe it would have happened, so they can partly attribute it to the program. And 2 of them said, no, this cannot actually be attributed to the program. So in that way, we should probably disregard the 2, but this gives you a quick indication of what the kinds of changes are and whether it can be traced back to your program. I see my internet is a little bit unstable. Just shout if I need to repeat something. Okay, so I know it's not always a good idea to quantify your qualitative data, but it's a shortcut that you can use in addition to your normal thematic content analysis. Here's another way in which you can quickly make sense of your data. Which activity contributed to these changes? And you can see we had 10 of the stories that related to the activity peer review, doing the peer review activity. So that tells you this is probably a very valuable activity.
Oh dear, we lost Benita.
It seems like we've been sent back to plenary. Let me try and find out what's happening.
The connection was weak. So.
Have we lost Benita or have we been?
I think we've lost Benita because it's 28 of us in this.
Yeah. So we're still in the breakout.
She's back.
Sorry, I'm back.
Oh, you're back.
All right, where did I lose you?
You were on the slide when you were talking about it's maybe not a good idea to quantify your qualitative data, but however, sometimes one must.
Sometimes it allows you to make sense of some trends, and in addition to your normal thematic content analysis.
Sorry, Benita, can you share your screen again?
Oh, of course.
Thanks.
In addition to then doing your normal qualitative data analysis using like I say, thematic analysis, quantifying your data can help you quickly find trends. Okay, so I think I explained this graph. The next one helps you to figure out we had a number of stories, so 10 plus 8, 765, the total number of stories, but you could see most of the stories related back to the peer review activity, right? Some of them related back to your plenary at the national meeting. So again, it gives you a quick idea when you go back to your theory of change, which of these changes actually occurred. Was it a significant one or not significant one, fully attributed, partly attributed to your activities? Right, so that's the story. Maybe just before I move on, just get some quick reactions. Does this make sense? Have you used something similar?
Benita, can I make a quick comment?
Sure.
Because we have used at Bridge, we used your impact story templates, as you obviously know, and we've used them in different formats in different projects. But one of the things we noticed was that it's the differences you get between getting participants to fill it in themselves or doing it through an interview format with them. And you get much richer information, obviously, when you're actually sitting with them rather than getting people to fill it in. But the second point is that different interviewers need to spend quite a lot of time then making sure they've interpreted things in a similar way, because you know, one tends to kind of just end up having a big long chat. So one needs a bit of structuring before and after if you're going to have any comparability. That's the point I wanted to make.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, very useful. Anybody else? So, I mean, basically it takes a normal qualitative interview, it adds a couple of additional twists to it, and it gives you, you know, qualitative data in a specific structure that allows you to get to better quality conclusions and findings, I think, at the end of the day. Anybody else would like to share a reaction or a comment about this?
It's Rob here from PSA. Not to sort of add to anything, but just to say I think I hadn't seen that as a tool, and I think it'd be really useful. So thanks for sharing that. We'll certainly will have a look at it so that we can see how we can apply it. So really helpful. Thank you.
Excellent. All right. And like I say, adapt it for your purposes, try it out. It's nice and flexible. You can use it in an interview. You can do it as a form, but like Melissa said, you don't necessarily get the level of detail. What we also find is sometimes when we speak to somebody during an interview, they will mention 5 different changes. So then sometimes what we will do is we will document 5 different impact stories in this kind of format for each one of the examples that they mentioned. It gives you a lot of detailed data.
Sure.
Okay. Shall I move on? All right, so WhatsApp. Oh, who of you love WhatsApp? Are you on school WhatsApp groups and family WhatsApp groups and neighborhood WhatsApp groups like I am? Do you have enough WhatsApp groups to go around? I'm sure, right? Okay, so all I want to alert you to is that this is a data source that you might be able to use for your evaluation purposes. But now I need to say a couple of things about that. Actually, did you know this? If you send something on WhatsApp to somebody else, even if it is in a private conversation, that content is considered published, and you are considered the author of that published content. So if you get into trouble, legal trouble with libel, somebody can actually take you to court and say you published this information. So actually, WhatsApp information is seen as a publishable data source, but it doesn't mean that it is publicly available. Right? You do need to respect the rights of the people who have participated in this data in the WhatsApp chats. So when we would like to use WhatsApp data for an evaluation of some kind, we usually set up these groups, or an implementer project manager would set up the groups, and the evaluators will sit on the group as one of the members. And we would write at the start of the group, say, listen, we want to use this for research purposes. If that is okay, let us know, and we'll do a little poll. So we'll get proper consent. Or afterwards, sometimes we're not able to get that up front. So afterwards, we then ask each and every participant in that chat whether they're okay with that data being used for the purposes of the evaluation or the research that you're trying to do. Let me show you what I have done. I did get consent from my colleagues. So I'm going to show you, when you go on your phone, you click on the top right corner, a little dialog box like this jumps up. So my phone is just on a black mode, so yours might be white, but okay. So then you click on more, and then you go to export chat. All right, and when what that happens is it gives you then a text file that looks something like this. All right, so this is just an example. So what I'm sharing with you is, in my office, we have a WhatsApp group for COVID screening. Every day when somebody comes into the office, they need to say what time they're arriving, what time they are leaving, if they have any COVID symptoms. All right, so that's a simple way. We don't have many people in our office, so it's not very complicated to keep track of this. But say a year later, we would like to do something with this data. I don't know, maybe you've got an evaluation question that says, do the government requirement that people do screening actually, did it get implemented in this organization? Now, here we've got a record and we know how many people are in the organization. We could check that Benita didn't respond. She forgot to log her time quite a lot. All right, so that might be an example of a question that you might want to answer. So you can then, this is a nice data source that you can pull off and do any kinds of analysis with. Again, you can count keywords, you can do thematic analysis with this. We've actually used it you might know, many of the education groups during COVID needed to do virtual kind of coaching or virtual support to participants. So you'll have a coach and 20 teachers. They'll start a WhatsApp group. And then on Monday, they will send them a message to say, hey, I hope you have a wonderful day. And then everybody will respond. And then on Tuesday, they say, I found this really useful resource on the Department of Basic Education's website. It's a 2-minute video. Please watch it. And then everybody says yes. And somebody would ask a question about it. And on Thursday, the coach might send a question. Please give me an example of the most, or the thing that you struggled with most this week. And then people will ask the questions and they'll facilitate a comment around that. So that's the kind of groups that we've seen during COVID. And what you can do, if you've got permission, either beforehand or afterwards, and it's really important to get the permission from everybody on the group, you can go and analyze that data and figure out, did all of the coaches have the same level of participation? Okay, did they all have the same structure of communication? There might be a range of evaluation questions that you're able to answer with a record of your WhatsApp data. Now, getting the consent sounds simpler than it actually is. So yeah, it's definitely very important to do that. And again, once you've drawn the data down, it's also important to think about the personally identifiable information. You can see in the example I'm sharing on the screen now, there's no telephone numbers there, but it's because these people are in my contact list, right? If the people are not on your contact list, their cell phone numbers will actually be displayed. And that's really sensitive information that you need to carefully take, take care to protect in your data repositories, right? So it's an available data source, but you need to think carefully about the ethics of using it. So again, maybe if I pause there, anybody had an example or similar experience using WhatsApp data for their project evaluations or monitoring purposes?
Not from our side.
Have you never done this? Oh, now you should. Now everybody's going to go off and export the family WhatsApp chat and go and analyze it, right? Never done this. Do you think it's something that can work? Or what, maybe let's just have a quick chat about, do you think it is workable, feasible, and do you think it would be valuable, and why do you say so?
Hi, Benita, it's Hasina.
Hi, Hasina.
I think we can definitely use this. I'm just thinking, you know, we're a national organization, and we don't see each other enough. And often we do check-ins, you know, like how you feeling, or we actually have a check-in question. And I think if, you know, every Monday, or I'm just thinking on a Monday morning or a Friday afternoon, something like that, you know, asking a particular question, and then we can look at the patterns, you know. Yeah, well, I'm thinking we can definitely use it. I never knew this existed, I have to say.
So you can also export your data with media or without media. So
yeah,
if somebody posted, you know, photos, etc. Usually when you start to extract the media, your files get really big, and it takes a long time to download it. And then, you know, if you import it into a qualitative data analysis tool, you can do all kinds of fancy things with it. Something else that I've done, well, a similar data source, Twitter. So there is a way in which you can also export data, Twitter data, with a specific little app add-on, and then you can extract that text and start to analyze it as well. So one of the ways in which you can analyze qualitative data is doing something called sentiment analysis. And Google has a sentiment analysis engine where you can literally take a bunch of text, dump it into the sentiment analysis text, and it'll give you an indication of, in file 1, are people more positive or more negative around a specific topic. Now, so the thing is, when we talk about big data, I often struggle to understand what people mean about that, you know, in our context in education. It's not like, you know, I'm going to pull off satellite data and do anything meaningful with that in my evaluations around education. I can probably think of something to do, but big data sounds to me like, I'm sure you might have had better experience than I have, but this is WhatsApp data, Twitter data. That's the closest to big data that I've actually used in my evaluations. So it's something that you definitely need to consider. So somebody asked about, let me just repeat about the consent. As with all of your data, it's really important to pay attention to the ethics around it. There's some guidelines around how to deal with personally identifiable information. Different organizations, there's one called MERL Tech, which is MERL Tech. They've got a website, and they have all kinds of practice and use guidelines for how to deal with ethical issues related to your data. I think the principle is just get consent from everybody before you use your data, the qualitative data from WhatsApps, right? If people say no, they mean no. It's better to get the data up front, because you don't want to surprise people afterwards if you are going to use that data. Yeah, so I think it's just about making sure that you've got consent to use the data. And then the other point that I made is to make sure that you take care of the personally identifiable information. I mean, another way, if you go back to the Zoom chat, there's actually an option for everybody to download a copy of the Zoom chat, right? So that's another source of data that if you have an evaluation question that makes sense, you can download that data source and in the same way start pulling it into your analysis. Okay, so those are the two data sources. Anybody else got a burning question before I move on? Okay, word clouds. Oh, don't we love word clouds? We often see them in, you know, magazines and things like that, but I don't know if you've actually thought about using them for qualitative data analysis. Okay, there's limitations to it, but let me show you what I have in mind. It's a quick tool that I sometimes use just to get a sense of what's going on in my data. So how to create a word cloud. So I use SurveyMonkey for a lot of my data collection. And what you can then do is you can actually collect your interview data and create a word cloud directly in SurveyMonkey on it. But there are very many free versions of word cloud generator software available online. Again, be very careful about the one that you select. You don't want people to store data in online repositories if that's not covered in your, your data ethics policies in the organization. But okay, I think that the rider goes with any kind of data collection. Just make sure that you've taken care of the ethics side of your data collection, also the storage of it. So here's an example of word clouds. I'll show you a live example just now. So go to wordclouds.com, you say, go to the word logs, you say, extract the words from text, and then you type or paste some questions in, and then it creates a word cloud like this, which you can then play around with different colors. You can use a mask, so this one had a specific pattern. You can then save it as an image, or you can print it, or you can share it directly to Facebook or Twitter. And you can do something like this, right? So you show you, here's the tool, right? So you want to go to extract words from text. You can also import it from a document. There's different options to get the text in. Let's get an example. Oh, let's try this with the WhatsApp data I shared with you just now. One second. Now, guess what's going to jump out? Let's see. So what the word cloud does is it actually gives you an indication of the most common words that are used in a specific text. Oh, I think I've put so much text into this word cloud generator that it's going to take forever to render the image. It's going to be a surprise to us what it looks like. See, it uses a little mask like this. Yeah, the words aren't showing up. It's still rendering. Okay, we can come back to this. Ah, look at this. Interesting. What do you see here? Good. Hello. Morning. Yes. Still. Now. Yesterday. Office. And a bunch of other things. So, in our COVID screening list, we would say, good morning, everybody. You can definitely see we have very many good mornings in our office, right? I took away the names of all of my colleagues, but my name was left in as one of the items on the list. So that comes up quite frequently. So Benita, I will be at the office today from exit. All right. So this gives you, do you find it useful? Just to get a sense of what's going on in your data, right, Magali?
Yeah.
I'm just curious to know. I haven't used that tool, but I would think it would be useful if you could calibrate the tool to not count specific words that you feel are not going to be meaningful in the analysis. Is that is that a possibility with this tool?
It depends on your tool. So in SurveyMonkey, there's definitely a way in which you can exclude words like the and for and is from the top. So it depends on the tool you use. Okay. You can also exclude specific words, but let me show you. If you want to, I've actually taken a word cloud and put it on a presentation slide with some findings for a client. Okay, so this was a question that we asked. So qualitative interviews done old school style, face-to-face or telephonic. I think it might actually have been. We've actually captured the data, the notes. And then what I did is I just extracted all of the text from that one question, put it into, this is SurveyMonkey's word cloud. And it was after the first term of this intervention in the schools. And we asked, so what have changed in your school so far? And the message is soon. It's too soon, is basically what everybody says, all right? It's early, it's too soon. We then could say most participants said it was too soon to see any changes. Again, I went back to my qualitative data and analyzed it, old school style, thematic content analysis, right? However, some examples were mentioned relating to the functioning of the SMT, how remediation is approached, how assessment moderation is approached, how timetabling is handled, and even some mentions of dealing with learner discipline and fundraising. So your word cloud is actually something that you can use to supplement it just demonstrates your data. You get a very quick sense of what's going on in your data. And then sorry, I quantified the qualitative data. But just to get a sense of what are the kinds of changes, once we've coded the data, you can see that we had 14 people say there's no change, it is too early. 11 people mentioned something about timetables, 7 SMT functioning, etc. This gives you a sense of, well, the one thing that this program is obviously helping people with is getting their timetablings right. And that in its own is a quite useful way. So word clouds, quick way to get a sense of what's going on. And Hasina says, you know, it appeals to the visual learners and the visual thinkers amongst us. Works really fabulously for presentations to your clients. So it's kind of an analysis tool. It's limited. It allows you to, you can't use this alone, right? So none of these methods that I'm showing you now can be used alone. You obviously need to put that within a bigger evaluation design and think carefully about all of your analysis, but it's just an additional tool that you can use to put in your quiver. Useful. Okay, let me then go on to something else. Computer-aided qualitative data analysis software. All right. You've probably heard of Atlas TI. It's something that very many of us that come from research backgrounds in universities, you probably would have heard about Atlas. Atlas is expensive though. Even for a consultant like myself, there are a couple of tools available. And if you're a small NGO, or you might not have the budget to invest in like a paid version of a qualitative data analysis software. Our consultancy actually has a paid up version of this specific one called QDA Minor. But why I like the fact that it's got a light version is if in some instances I want to make my data set available to my NGO partner so that they can also poke around and see how I've coded my data. I can actually make it available. They can download the light version of the software. They can import the data file that I've actually coded, and they can poke around with it. So it's really useful. It's a nice tool. It's got the same basics as Atlas TI and many of the other qualitative data analysis tools. It takes a little bit of time to get used to it and to figure out how to use it, but check it out if you're interested in looking at it. So it's not only, you don't just use this for when you do your master's thesis at university or when you are a consultant doing your evaluation report writing. I've even heard people using this software to do literature reviews, right? So you pull in all of your literature from different sources and you start coding it. So, oh, this is a really nice section that was written about topic A, topic B. And when you need to go back, it's quick to find. So let me show you a little bit more. The links for the downloads are there. There's a 7-minute overview video that you can watch on your own time just to get a sense of how it works. Okay, let me show you the live data set. I've chosen my case very carefully so that it doesn't reveal too much. Okay, it's a lot to take in, I know. Can you still see my screen? I hope.
Yeah.
All right. So how it works is you import your documents, and here I have a bunch of interview notes and field notes from the researchers. And then I went off and I coded it. This is a program called the DDSP. It's something that ran 20 years ago. And what I was interested in is looking at the interview data and see if people mentioned the original design, right? So the DDSP developed performers, they trained the districts, they ran elections, etc. So I created these codes, and then when I go back to my data and I find something that I can code, I actually just highlight the text and I code it. So let me show you an example. Program elements, I had a coding framework for outcomes, if it's a short or long-term outcome, or if it was something that wasn't sustained. I had a whole shopping list of the types of results that we actually found in the data set. We were interested in a range of context variables, and we were interested in the sustainment over time, and we were interested in if the participant could attribute it strongly. Now, the coding framework you come up with, either from a theoretical base or from, you know, working with a grounded theory approach, looking at your data and see what emerges from it. But the point is, you put together your codes, you can specify a coding note. This one, historical. Any description of a historical event is a negative thing. This is a positive sentiment mention, right? So you can develop your coding framework. Then you go to your text, to this one. The principal and one HOD received DDSP training. All right, so if I was interested in coding that, I would say train SMT members. And that was in fact what I coded it as. Right, so you literally just highlight your text and you add your code. You can see just this little stub, how many different codes I was able to, to pull out. Is a nice little visual description of, if I look at all of my codes, my code list, how much text did I find, how many instances of DDSP input trained did I find, that's green ones, etc. So qualitative, it's a little bit complicated. It will take time to get used to it, but go watch a 7-minute video, download it, play around with it. I don't think you'll regret it. Once your data is coded, you can do all kinds of interesting things like counting the number of codes, looking for specific kind of, if you're looking for any mentions, a principal being trained, you literally just select it and then it finds all of, it found it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 accounts where we got that specific text string. So the principle of qualitative data analysis software, is what I wanted to explain to you, and I wanted to alert you to the fact that there's this tool that's available for free, that at least have some of the functionality that you would need, that you can go and try out if you're interested. So the details around how to use that is not within the scope of a 10-minute chat today, of course. All right, I showed you how to extract the data. Oh, and that's at the end of the presentation. I think it's right on time as well. So I don't know, maybe just again to give an opportunity to you to reflect, have you used other kinds of qualitative data analysis software? Do you think, have you used QDA MinerLite? Do you think it's something you might be able to try out?
Rob from PSA hadn't used it, but definitely is something that would be good to explore. Thanks very much, Benita. Really appreciate it.
It's a big pleasure. MaxQDA. Marion asks, has anybody used MaxQDA? No, I haven't used that. Marion, do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Sorry, I'm in a room where another call's happening. But no, I was just interviewing with another organization and they were using or looking at using that, and it was the first time it had come up. So I was just wondering if you knew anything about it and how it would compare to CAQDA.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I actually haven't used that one.
Okay.
The internet is wonderful. You probably will get a comparison if you look for it somewhere. So it's definitely something to look into. Okay, I see we're going to return back to the main room. Do anybody else would like to make a last comment?
It just makes me realize how important it is, though, for at organizational level, for NGOs to get a better understanding of how to analyze their own data.
Yeah.
And look, I mean, you can be as systematic as you need to about it, right? If you you don't need to use all of the tools, but yeah, you can. If you've got lots of data, it's probably better to work more systematically with it, and that you can trace the findings over time. So definitely something to consider. Thanks for your time and attention. I think we're going to return back to the main room now.
Thanks, Benita.
Thanks very much.